kind of, more in the beginning, like, okay, what am I doing? And then that way you kind of plan out the week of like what.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to our very first ever homeschool curriculum training seminar. We provide a lot of training during your one-on-one meetings with your advisory teachers, but sometimes you just want to start off with a good, solid understanding of where you're heading. And so this was one of the ways we wanted to grow this year, is just making sure that everyone felt like they had what they need for using something like Journeys. When you receive it, when you go home with your curriculum and it's a stack this tall, it's a little intimidating. So our goal today, we're going to go through what the different component pieces are and how to use them. The advisory teachers are going to walk you through kind of a day in the life of a Journeys lesson, and also point out all the really user-friendly features. Like our teacher edition has little guides and say, hey, if your kid says this, they might still be struggling with that, and here's what to do. So just kind of walking you through how to use the curriculum to make a really rich and robust experience for your children, and also what you don't need to use, right? What you're not needing. So we've got that prepared. We're going to have a little bit of time also to work in groups where we will group you up with an advisory teacher and a grade level, a grade level band, and you can kind of look through it and talk through it together, and maybe even walk away from today having gotten some plans solidified in your mind. We are also prepared to hang out afterwards and continue to answer your questions even after we finish, like kind of the overall presentation. The temperature in this room is either frigid or just like so stuffy, and so as you need one or the other, just let us know. So we started with refrigerator so that as it, so it buys us a little bit of time, but as it starts to get too stuffy, just let us know. We prepped kids area in this back room for there's just toys back there, so kids are welcome to go back there. If you need to use the restroom during your time with us, there is a key that's hanging right above my spider plant. Just grab it and go. It's right down to the end of the building and turn right. We are recording today's seminar. We'll see how it goes. I'm standing exactly on my mark, so we'll see. But I'm going to sit there and just try to make sure we keep things in frame. And then afterwards, I will post it onto just my my school YouTube channel situation. So that's how we'll share it with anybody who wasn't able to be here. And refreshments out front, please feel free to get up and take a break anytime that your body needs that. And we'll go from there. All right.
Joy, can I do one quick question? How many have kinders in here? So 1 kinder, 2 kinders, first grade, 1, 2, second grade, 1, 2, third, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth, sixth. Awesome. And then what grade is yours?
Kinder.
Are you sure? Yeah. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is John Bissell, and we're all here today for a curriculum training on Journeys. So for each of our GBA meetings, we always want to go back to our vision. With our vision for GBA is that Great Valley Academies envision thriving communities strengthened by individuals who act with confidence, learn tenaciously, celebrate the differences of others, and positively impact the world around them. And our mission, Great Valley Academies create a safe, love learning environment where all students develop foundational thinking skills and positive character traits to achieve their greatest potential. We have core values here at GVA. The core value that we're focusing on today is our purpose. So we're going to develop and champion safe, love learning, school communities for everyone. our objectives today. We're going to explore Journey's materials, address common challenges and solutions, and identify curriculum goals and objectives. All right, jumping into Journeys. So if everybody here has had their meetings with their initial meetings with their curriculum, then the things that you have received are 6 spiral teacher editions. Each of these teacher editions has 5 lessons. There's 6 of them for a total of 30 lessons. You're also going to be receiving a reader's notebook. Some of you have a 1.1 or 1.2. That's for the first half of the year and the second half of the year. Other grades, you just have one big one. Along with that reader's notebook, you have the TE. This is where you're going to find your answer key to all your reader's notebook worksheets. And then the textbooks. First grade, I believe, there's 6 of them, 1 for each unit. For other grades, there might be a 1.1 or 1.2, and then for other grades, it's one big one. But this is your hardback book. This is where you're going to find all the stories. On top of these materials, you're also going to have Think Central, which is our online component that goes with it. And that's going to be something that we teach you guys how to log into and how to get some extra information and extra materials from there. And here is Mr. Newsom.
Hello, my name is Mr. Newsom, and I'll be going over a walkthrough of a lesson in Journeys. If you have a second grade textbook, it's following along with that, but it really follows the same structure for all grades. That first thing that I'd like to talk about is the focus wall. So you would find that if you turn to the first whole group tab, it turns right to the focus wall. And these are the things that your student is going to learn that week. Each lesson in Journeys is 1 week. It's 5 days of instruction. So it goes over all of the different things they will be learning in a week's time. Immediately, or a few pages after that, the focus wall, you will find the weekly planner. The weekly planner, it lays out all the things that you'd be doing that week, and in a day, it lays out all the materials that you would need. Many of these would be found on Think Central, and we're going to be like the projectables, and we'll be printing those up for you today, everyone that's here. What was your question?
I was going to say, what page was it? Because we didn't.
Oh, it's a little bit
Sorry.
different for everybody.
Oh, okay.
So once you find that tab, you just go a few pages, and then it's 2 pages that go Monday through Friday. And in teaching, we do a thing called backwards planning often, and that's where we'll look at the assessment to kind of judge how we're going to teach. So if you would look at that small group tab, if you turn to that tab, it's the end of your week, every week. And we're going to go over the 2 pages that talk about the assessment. So every week in Journeys, you'll be able to take the standards-based weekly test, and it gives you instructions on how to administer the test without giving it away. So it gives you some testing tips there. On this page, it gives you some if and then instruction. So if your student met the goal, they were very successful in the test, you continue on. If they were struggling in a certain category, it gives you some ideas of how to support them. And some of those things that you could do to support them would be found in that small group tab. And we don't spend too much time on that, but the small group tab, it offers support for things that your student might not be getting easily. This slide is just going over what I just said, those if-thens. If they're struggling, you can do this. I'm going to turn back the next 2 pages. Every week, your student will also be doing this writing assignment. We choose this one because it has a really nice rubric so that we can, give an assessment to them. This page, it gives an example of what satisfactory grade level writing would look like for your student. So they'll show what their rough draft would look like, the edits that they made, and what that final draft would look like. Below, it gives a grading scale. So when we were in school, we saw, A through F. That's not how things are graded anymore. It's a 4, 3, 2, 1, with 4 being the highest, meaning that they can do it independently really well. 3 would be they can mostly do it independently. 2 would be sometimes they can do it independently, or with some help they're doing it really well. 1 would be that there are some serious struggles. So moving on to the next slide. And this slide is just going over that rubric I just spoke about. So turning to the next slide, it is our next page back. It is going over grammar.
I was gonna do a quick check-in.
Sure.
Are we feeling okay with the pace of being able to move inside, or do we need to just slow down a little bit so you guys can find the page in the book? So maybe when we go to
Slow
a
down a
page,
little
when
bit.
you get there, if you give us like a thumbs up,
Sure,
then
I'll be
we know,
looking.
and then
Thank you, Miss Finn.
kind of give a little bit. Since some
And
of us-
ATs, if you want to,
yeah,
chime
we'll
in,
walk
that's
around.
okay.
If you need help, just a hand, and
I welcome the peanut gallery. It's okay. Okay. So we're just moving right on. So grade for this week, that grammar skill was, I believe, writing in complete sentences, which is a great thing to start off the year with. Now I'm going way back to the beginning. So in your textbook, or in your TE, the first few pages, they give you some just background about the teachers that made it. We're looking until we're seeing the table of contents for your student. It's going to have that first unit is narrative writing. So this would be in your student's textbook, the hard book, right after their table of contents. And it just is a way to get them excited about learning this topic. We're going to follow the directions on the screen, just on the book. It's telling you how to get them to motivate, engage them. There is a quote by Helen Keller. So it gives you some information right here, give background on Helen Keller. So there's a lot of teaching that happens in this book that you wouldn't see just in your student edition. So it is very important that we're using this to guide and to add to that teaching. Because especially in kindergarten, first grade, in their hard book, there's not going to be a lot. It's going to be almost all in the teacher book. So this is just a way to say, these are what we're learning about for 5 weeks and how to get them excited. So now I'm going to go back to that focus wall. We've showed you where the week is going to end. It's going to end with a test. It's going to end with a writing assignment. And now I'm going back. I'm finding that weekly planner. I'm turning the page. And it's the read aloud. So after you've introduced the unit that you're talking about, it's the neighborhood visit in second grade. Every 5 weeks when they finish the whole book, they're going to do a performance task. It's a writing assignment that has to do with the things they've learned. Now we're on opening routines, day 1.
Are we all on the read aloud? Or we just stay one?
Let's see. I thought it-
I think it's gonna be.
Did we skip the, okay, read aloud? And was this your part? Or it's later? Okay, so the read aloud? The read aloud, it's a story that's not in your student edition. So you're following along with, you're modeling fluency, meaning that you're reading well, you're reading, the best that you can, you're demonstrating it to them. It gives you further instructions. And I would recommend that your student is sitting beside you and they're tracking your finger as you read. And so you would have the choice of either they're just actively listening or that they're following along. And I think that if they're following along, they have a better chance of, learning new words. So that would be my recommendation for that. Okay. So I'm going to skip back in the slides to that opening routine day 1.
And it's gonna look different in different grade levels?
It will. It's going to look a lot different per grade level. This is for 2nd grade. So when we go into those breakout groups, you'll be able to look at the book that is exactly the one that you'll be using. So whole group day 1, we always are going to start in the top corner, that purple writing. It says share the objective. That's the goal, so that your student knows what they're learning about and what the goal is. What they're learning about, what they're expected to do. And then you're going to follow along. I don't know if you can see the cursor on the screen. After objectives, you're going to follow the instructions for teach and practice and apply. Now, you'll also see in your book English language support. And I tell all my families it's not just for students that are English language learners. It just gives good teaching strategies for struggling students. So just because your student is not an English language learner doesn't mean you're not going to see things that could be helpful there. So I'm just going to hit the next slide. It's going to go to that next page. And a lot of the grades are going to have this as their first page. It's the vocabulary cards, things that they're learning this week. I'm just starting again at the top. This right here, it's called a formative assessment. That's just a check-in. Does my student know what I'm asking them? And it gives some support if they're not there yet. Okay. Now I'm turning the page. I'm going to be going till, let's see. So whole group day 1, read and comprehend. I'm doing the same thing. I'm sharing the objective with my student. The target skill is sequence of events. I have those English language supports right here. And on the inside of the book, you'll see pages that your student has. So now we're starting to see how we can support the kiddos. And then I don't think that, oh, that's why this wasn't matching. I grabbed the book for grade 5. So there you go. So let me just set that down. I'll rely on the slides. Okay. So my apologies to the teachers that might have been confused of why I was off and on. That's because all of your books will be a little bit different and similar. Okay, so I'm in whole group day 1. I'm following the directions in the teacher edition. The target strategy is to make an inference or a prediction. And so that's just right here on the side. I'm doing my best to follow along with the directions as they're given. One of the things that I put on that first slide for that, your week at a glance, is that you have 90 minutes for your ELA block every day, and you're doing Lexia, and you're doing RAS. So there's some things that you're not gonna get to on day one. Then that might go into day two. Also, don't worry, a lot of the teachers across the street have not started teaching curriculum yet. So they're doing routines. So taking 2 weeks for lesson 1 is totally appropriate. Especially since you're just getting your training today. Think of week 1 as this week and next week. Okay, so I'm just following along with the instructions. Now we're to the anchor text. The anchor text is that main story each week. I'm sharing the genre. It's realistic fiction, and then I'm following the directions as they're laid out here, and we're reading the text here. We're introducing the author and the illustrator. We're continuing with whole group day 1. We're following along in our TE as we read to the student. The essential question this week for this lesson is, what is a perfect pet like? Tell them to think about that while you read with them. So they are giving you things that you are doing with your student the whole time. It's really a good idea for them to have like a journal or a notebook so that anytime there's writing that they're just being asked to do, that they can do a quick sentence. Here they're being asked to do predictive writing and to set a purpose. We're continuing on. We're following those directions as they are laid out for them. And you'll see in your textbook first read. So on that day 1, you're following the directions for first read. And then when it says second read, you're saving that for the next day. Because you will read each story twice. They want you to read it once and then come back to it. Here we see another formative assessment, and that's just that check-in where they give you some tips, some teaching tips if it's not getting there right away. We're continuing on. So after we've read the story, there's a guided retelling for the second grade. We just followed the directions on the page. This one I'm seeing is not in the T or in the student edition, so that's why we have our teacher edition with us. Okay, so that after we've taught to the story, that anchor text, there's about 20 minutes that you're going to teach, or 20 to 30 minutes that you're teaching the grammar skill, the spelling skill, just like the pieces of the English language. So for grammar, day 1, you share the objective. And so there's a grammar, spelling, and writing objective. If you want to do spelling tests, that's up to you. It's not something we're going to require. I know that for my family it was a big deal. So if you want to make it a big deal for your family, that's okay.
Quick pause, because for grammar for the younger grades, it goes by day 1 to 2, day 3. And your older grades, it's gonna be spread out more like this. So it's not gonna be, it's gonna be laid out like day 1, day 2, day 3. And in the younger grades, it's at the end of each day. Yes. So for the older grades, grammar's just laid out among 2 pages rather than spread out throughout the different days of the lesson.
And if you want to split up your ELA lesson to do those grammar parts at another point of the day, or to do them first, that's okay too.
Everybody's on grammar?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that same thing, it's going to build each day. So you just do your best to follow along with day 1. So for second grade, it was identify the subject of a sentence, spell words with short vowels if, and identify characteristics of good story sentences. Same thing for writing. We're following along with those directions. I can see right here that we will need a projectable, so we'll make sure we get those to you today. And then we follow along the writer's checklist, some things that your writer should have to be successful in this lesson, and then the guided practice and apply. Alrighty, Miss Fan, I'll turn it over to you.
All the slides too. So if you felt like you couldn't take notes as we were going, we got the slides to hand out. Yeah, we can get those out now because we'll have to be getting some codes that you'll need for these too.
So in the books that you have, what we've just been kind of going over, a way to find out like where your read alouds are, where your spelling is, where your grammar is. You kind of look at the colors up in the corner. Grammar, and see how it's green here? That's like kind of your grammar and your spelling. Blue seems to be, from what I'm looking at, more of like the read alouds. So kind of look up in the top if you're going, okay, where do I find this topic? You can kind of use this top kind of edge to find out for those older grade levels, like the. So this one here, up in the corner, we have green grammar, and the third, fourth, and fifth at the top, the green is like the grammar, the phonics, the spelling. Okay, so slowing down just a little bit. We do have digital materials for guided instruction, and what I built is a Google Classroom to access some of the worksheets. They're called projectables. So if you've opened up your book and you go to day 1 of writing and it says use projectable 1.2, and you go, that was not given to me, right? Then it kind of makes you go, I'm just gonna skip that part, right? So what I did is I made a Google Classroom that has just strictly Journeys projectables, and I have K through 6 on there. So what we did today is we've printed out, we'll have printed out copies of lesson 1 and lesson 2 for you. And then after that, if you're wanting, you can just go on this Google Classroom and you can print out the pages that you want. If they come into like a thick packet of about 10 to 12 per lesson, and if you don't want to use every single piece of it, then you can just pick out the pages that you want. And then if you don't have access to a printer, then you could just check in with your AT teacher and say, hey, I'm coming in next week. I'm on this lesson. Could you print out those projectables for me? Okay. So on the Google Classroom, especially for kindergarten, because kindergarten, you're not getting this thick book like this with all the stories in it. Okay. So for that reason, we have them on a Google Classroom, and I'm going to show you guys how to get access to that. So in the Google Classroom, for kindergarten, I have the read alouds, the big books, the projectables, flip charts, and then some digital decodable books. And then to access your Google Classroom, you're going to use your student's email, Google email, and Google password. And then there's going to be a code for you to join that class. Okay. So this picture right here is just a screenshot from Google Classroom. This one's specifically for kinders, and under the classwork heading is where you're going to find the materials for your grade level. I have one just that says projectables, and it's K through 6. So at the top it'll say projectables kindergarten, underneath that projectables first grade, and so forth. So this is the code that you're going to need to access your Google Classroom to get those projectables. And most importantly, for the kindergarten read alouds, I have the code here. So for K through 6 projectable, the code is BJG7SHY. That's going to be K through 6, and it's just one Google Classroom. Yeah.
Is that also TK?
No, TK is entirely separate because TK is going to be the Frog Street. So you don't have to worry about that right now. And then for kindergarten, to access all the read alouds in the book, so when you open up and you're like, where's this book at? For kindergarten, all the books are electronic, and that code is Y2JZIJ3.
And it's in your packet.
It's in the packet too, so don't stress about that. So when you go on to Google, you click login in the corner, you type in their email and their password. What you do is there's this little waffle. It looks like a little waffle. It's like 9 little squares, like a little pen pad. When you click that, there's an icon that says classroom. And then when you open up that classroom, this is going to be blank. There's not going to be anything there, but there's going to be a little plus sign in the corner. So when you click that plus sign, you're gonna click join a class. And then it's gonna ask for a classroom code. That classroom code is one of these two here. And once you do that, it's gonna put you into the classroom. And it's gonna say here for kindergarten, it says, like Journey's kindergarten. And then it says, one of them says Journey's projectable. So you can put them both on there if you have kids in different grade levels. So if you have a kindergartner, plus if you also have somebody in another grade, you could have them all under one kid's Google Classroom. You don't have to log in separately each time. You could add as many classrooms as you want. Is that part making sense so far? Okay. So navigating Google Classroom. When you get into Google Classroom, there's gonna be something along the top that says stream, classwork, people, and grades. The only thing that we're focusing on is the classwork, because the stream is more so like, if I add something, it'll just say like, Miss Finn added blah, 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 blah. And it just goes down. We don't really use it for much for that. But under classwork, that's where you're gonna find all the pieces that you need. And what I wanted to do is show you guys Google Classroom. So Mr. Misselbeck is logged in on here. Let me see if I can sign into here for you. Okay, so I'm in Mr. Misselbeck's Google Classroom right now. And right now he doesn't have my Google Classroom on there. So I'm going to that plus sign and I'm doing join class. And then is there somebody that could read one of those codes back to me so that I could type it in on there?
BJG7SHY.
Okay, click join. That's joining. Now I'm into the Google Classroom. And now I'm gonna go to classwork. And this is for the projectables, okay? So I have kindergarten, I have first grade, second grade, and so forth. So if I go to, let's say kindergarten, I'm gonna click that link and I'm gonna click on the link that says Think Central, okay? This is gonna be inside your packet. So if I'm going back to our pacing or to our curriculum, slideshow, there's a Think Central login, okay? And once you log into it once for that day, you don't have to log into it again. And I'm just gonna go over it again, what I have on here. You're gonna have the slideshow that has this on here. And this is a universal, it's a universal login. Okay, so it doesn't matter what grade level, anything like that. You type this in. If you're going through Google Classroom and clicking on a material, it's gonna give you that information. So for country, we put United States. For the state, California. For the district, private. And like I said, don't stress out because it's gonna be in the slides that you're gonna get today. School is the Great Valley Academy Homeschool. And then the username is GVA student, all in one. And the password is GVACH2024. And I made that because all of your kiddos' logins, the passwords are GVACH2024. Okay? So once you type that in, I'm gonna go back out. This one's Mr. Misselbeck, so it's just not gonna look the same just on our screen. But it's gonna open up the projectables. Okay. And one way that you can navigate it is you can go up here in the corner to contents and you can click which unit you want to go to. So all of us right now are in unit 1. So if you click unit 1, then you can click which lesson you want. So I want lesson 1 for this week. And it's gonna give you the projectables for the week. And to navigate it, you're just using the arrows on the side. The first page is the projectable. So in kindergarten, one of them is focusing on writing names. So for this one, if you were doing the instruction, you'd say, people have names start with a capital letter. This boy's name is Ari, and this girl's name is Becca. And then you're asking them, oh, look it, I have a boy right here, what could his name be, right? And so this is the guided instruction piece of it, where for this page alone, you're just asking them, and then you're modeling how to write that out. So say, if I ask you, I have a boy right here, what could his name be? John, okay? And say names are very important. They're very special. They're, like with the little kids, I said, like, your family, like, they care about you so much, they want you to have a special name that's just yours, right? And so then every name starts with the capital letter. So you're modeling that capital letter, and you're modeling that right between the lines, start at the top, go down, no floaty letters, and you write out John for them. And you can help them if you're feeling they're good enough with sounds, you're like, J. What letter starts with J? Or what sound says J? You go through. Same thing for the girl. And then later on, which we'll dive more into it, but then at the bottom of the lesson, it'll say, okay, have them open up their writer's book where they're doing it independently. So these projectables are meant for guided instruction. Okay? That's why they're not in their little notebooks, because the purpose of it is for this to be what you're teaching them. And then technically their workbooks like this are meant more for like independent practice, to see if what you've taught them in the day, if they're able then to go transfer that. So you can really use these books to kind of be some of those like kind of informal assessments, but you could also use these books to kind of do some guided instruction within it if you feel that your student's not there yet. Does that kind of help a little bit for that? Because I know last year, when it was my first year here, I'm like, oh yeah, let's open up your book. Well, you open up to a page, it says, get out projectable 1.1. And I'm like, I don't know where that's at, right? And so our point here is to like help guide you in being able to use the teacher edition and not think this is some scary book, right? It looks overwhelming, but once we work through how to use it, that's a lot friendlier, and then people really like it because you're like, hey, I'm not doing this on my own. I have something that's gonna plan my day 1, my day 2. So we're gonna use this to be our friend and not our enemy.
Yeah.
Right? And later when we do our small group, we're gonna be able to dive into this more with you. And so just for navigating, and then say you're at home and you're like, I really wanna print out this page, I don't have it. What you're gonna do is in the 3 dots here, more, you can print out a page at a time, okay? So if you don't want every single projectable for that piece, you're like, my kid doesn't need help in this because we're already kind of doing that in our notebooks. You can print out specific ones you want and really easily navigate. You're hitting up that contents in the corner, and you can go by the unit, and then you can go into the lesson. And then to navigate it, you're just using your arrows. First page is the blank template, and then the second page is the kind of like the teacher guide, the answer key. So nouns for people, sample answer girl, sample answer man. So first page is what you can teach. If you're like, am I teaching it right? The second page after that is your answer key. Okay. So I think I got all of that for you. And then, so everybody feels good about the projectables in the Google Classroom. Same thing for Kinder. You click on a link and it's the same thing. It'll open up to the read alouds, and I'll dive more into that with you in the small group a little bit later. So moving on from here, this was just kind of like the pieces to say, hey, I have all my hardback books, my materials. I kind of showed you how to access the digital materials. And then what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go into just giving you like a short little, not a summary, just a small guided instruction for some of those core topics, such as a read aloud. So Ms. Reggiani is gonna come up and she's gonna show you what a read aloud looks like, so that you can have us model it for you and any questions you have.
So like what Ms. Ben said, we just did a quick overview of the day, of the week. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, like, whoa, it was a quick overview. And then Ms. Ben explained where to get the materials. And so with those 2 components, now we can finally teach
Now we get to teach.
So, before I go on, we're gonna do a pop quiz. Can you name all the components? I'm kidding. Okay. Alrighty. So,
And then you want to tell what grade level that read aloud is?
I will, yes, ma'am. Thank you. No, it's a great reminder. So this is second grade. Okay. So if you are in second grade, and I believe the other younger grades, maybe the older grades have it too, it's at the beginning of day 1 under the whole group tab. So go ahead and find that in your teacher's edition.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So it's the one that says teacher read aloud.
You can raise your hand if you need additional help. We're just looking for the read aloud section. It falls under the whole group tab, and we're on day 1. Doesn't matter what day. Oh, it says, yeah, that works. Oh, yeah, that's
T
okay.
means teacher. So if you see something that says T12, that's saying it's the teacher edition page 12.
Okay.
Yep, right here.
What is that? Okay, so for kinder, it just says read aloud book. This one happens, the second grade one it says teacher read aloud.
Probably because you have it in your read there.
Okay. Do you need help? You need help? Oh, no. Okay. So, if you look at this page, what do you notice? Like off the top of your head, going for different colors. Okay. There's a reason for that. If you notice, there's black. Can anyone guess what the black print may mean?
Information.
It's an explanation, the directions. You don't necessarily have to say that to the child, but it is background so that in your own words you can say it. And I'll explain in a little bit with that. What other colors do you see?
Pink.
Blue and pink. Okay. So the blue, can anyone guess what the blue might mean?
It's what we
It's what we read as a teacher. Okay. And lastly, we have pink. Yes, the pink is the student's answer. It's an example of an appropriate response. Okay, so with these 3 color-coded things, we can go about this more clearly. So, if you see on the top left, it says this year objectives. So, although it is in black, it's for your information, it is still important to share the objective with your child. So you might say, okay, the objective for the day, or what we're going to learn today, is we're going to listen to fluent reading. That means we're going to listen to how it would sound like when you're reading something naturally, and we're going to go into that. And then the next objective is ask and answer questions about what a speaker says. So as I read, you're going to answer questions. Recount details from a text, read aloud. So we're going to go back and think about the things that were mentioned or explained in the text. Do you see how I'm stating the objective, but I'm also using student-friendly words? Okay. Listen for and use words that show transition in a story. We're also going to look on about how we go from one part of a story to the next. Okay, so on the left side here, you are to preview. I would highly suggest previewing all the lessons prior to teaching it. Okay, but if you don't, you're modeling that you are going to research that answer. So that's okay too. Like, I wonder where I could get that answer. So that is teaching something else. So if you see under model fluency, if you happen to have a second grade book, it tells you, because it's in black, it says explain that good readers make their reading sound natural by recognizing most words quickly. Okay, so, and it explains, it continues to explain display projectable 1.1. So all these in black are directions and what to do. Okay, you don't necessarily have to say that to your child, but it's for you to do. You can take those, it's right here actually. You can take the words in black, and like I said, and how I modeled with objectives, say the directions in their terms. So for example, and I like to use fun with, it's always fun to use fun. So we are going to model how to speak naturally. So I'm going to read this to you, and all you're going to do is listen. And then I would ask my student, is that how we speak naturally? And most likely 99% of the time they'll say no. Okay, and so using the projectable 1.1, and we got this off the Google Classroom, we are going to model it. Now read alouds, the emphasis on that is for the child to listen. Okay, it's an oral reading. They're listening, and they're going to focus on how to read, like I said, naturally, attacking the words in a manner and how we like how we speak. Okay, so what about this? If I read it like this, is this how we should read or talk? The perfect pet. Carla didn't have a pet, but she loved to help her next door neighbor, Mrs. Stevens, take care of her cat, Sadie. Sadie had long, straight fur, the color of butterscotch. She also had 7 collars, a different one for each day of the week. And there's another paragraph, but you get the point. Okay, so that's in the projectable. So this is a model of how we distinguish how we should not read in my robotic voice, right, versus a natural reading. Teacher read loud. So after you've established how one should read, then you go into the read aloud that's in the TE. So the student doesn't see this, they're listening, and they're paying attention to how you are speaking. Now, if you notice, you may not see it up there, but if you notice, there are words highlighted in the read aloud, at least for 2nd grade. Not all the grades have this, and you'll also notice that there's like a numbering system, okay? And there's a numbering system here that matches. Just by looking at that, can you guess what the purpose of that is? Well, if you don't, the purpose of the matching numbers from one side to the right. We're just gonna quickly guess. Yes.
I'm thinking that those questions match where they go.
Yes, they do correspond to when you should ask that question. Now, just to make sure, I'm going to read the print in black. And it does tell me to read aloud the story and to pause at the numbered stopping points to ask children the questions below. So it does. You want to read the directions on that. So I'm going to read the read aloud in the teacher's edition. And your child should be listening attentively. You can even go through, what does it look like to be a good listener? Okay, and then you say, okay, we're going to just sit and just imagine what is being read. So with that same natural model of fluency, you're going to read the teacher read aloud. And after the end of the section, I'm going to pause and I'm going to go to the corresponding number and read that comprehension question and see if the student has an appropriate response. Okay, so you'll be my students. Let's see who's listening. It looks like you're great listeners. Awesome. Carla didn't have a pet, but she loved to help her next door neighbor, Mrs. Stevens, take care of her cat, Sadie. Sadie had long, straight fur, the color of butterscotch. She also had 7 collars, a different one for each day of the week. What are some details? So now I'm going to pause and I'm going to look at that, because like the ones right here, I'm going to go back and look at what one is asking me to ask the child. And it says, what are some details that describe Sadie? She had 7 collars. She had 7 collars. Is there any other details? Yes.
Fur is the color of butterscotch.
The fur is the color of butterscotch. Are there any other details that you noticed?
Different color
Straight
collar.
fur.
She had different color collars. Okay. Do you notice when I repeat the answer, I'm using complete sentences? Okay. In that, you're indirectly teaching them to use a complete sentence in a response. Okay. So that's the read aloud part. If you need more clarifying, I could actually do another paragraph, but I think you got the idea. Okay, any questions? Okay. Now, if your child does not get the correct answer, what do you think we could do? We can look back. You can even ask your child, what could we do when we don't know, that answer we forgot? We could always read it again. Okay, so that's that. Don't take the color coordination for granted. Read the directions ahead of time, and encourage your child in your modeling fluency phase. Did I even introduce myself? I'm Mrs. Reggiani. Crystal Reggiani, yes.
Alrighty, so just piggybacking off what Ms. Reggiani said, most importantly, anything in black is just stuff for you to read and understand why you are doing that particular item. Blue is the question you're asking the student, or blue is what you are stating to that student. And then pink is what an appropriate response could look like, right? Because we all, if you haven't, like, we remember what we were like when we were kids. But sometimes when we ask questions, if we're reading a story, right, not every story comes along with a set of questions for you to ask. And so sometimes if you're just reading that story and you're making up your own questions, you don't know if that question is actually appropriate to that student's grade level. So that's why we want to use it as a tool. So you're knowing that the questions you're asking are hitting at that intellectual level for your child. So once you go through that read aloud, beyond the read aloud, there is, for the younger grades, it's phonics instruction. For phonemic awareness, what I have up on the board is kindergarten, and then below is a first grade. So for this, I'm for the older grades, it would be like your spelling page. Okay? And so there's a difference between phonemic awareness and phonics, and then beyond phonics, it would be your spelling portion of journeys. And phonemic awareness is just being able to listen to sounds and then be able to manipulate them. So an important piece of being able to read to set your child up for success to be a stronger reader as they get older is for them to be able to hear sounds and then be able to recognize different parts of it, so that when they go and they start reading, if they could look at a word, they could say, I don't know that word, but I know that these letters make this sound. So another potential word that might be, like, I know this word, I don't know this word, but I know that this part makes this sound, and then they can manipulate maybe the beginning of it to make that new word from their decoding. So decoding is just being able to look at a word and breaking it up into sounds. Phonemic awareness is the first step where they're just listening. So kinders, they don't know how to read yet, right?
Yeah.
So kindergarten, they're listening, and then we go into first grade and beyond. That's when they have knowledge of letters and sounds, and then that's when they're using to build and to read. So phonemic awareness allows students opportunities to hear and manipulate words, and phonics teaches them the relationships between sounds and letters. So an example for phonemic awareness, if I was working with a student, I'm gonna say some sounds, and I want you to say yes if the sounds are the same. And so in blue it says, I'm gonna help you with the first one. Let's listen to these sounds. But, and then say it sounds with me now. So you guys are gonna do it. First I'm gonna say it, then you're gonna do it with me. So first I'm gonna say but. Okay, now let's all do it together. But. And then I'm asking, are the b and those the same sound, right? And we're gonna say, no, they're not, right?
Yeah.
It's okay if at the beginning they say yes, because this is the first opportunity that they're seeing that, right? And if they say yes, you're like, well, why? You can ask them questions about why. And then we're gonna say, buh, even to how you say it with using your mouth, it's not the same sound. And then we do it again with another example. So I'm gonna do it first. And I want you to do it with me. Do those sound the same? And our hopeful response is yes. Okay? And so this is just for day 1. What do you think we're gonna do on day 2? We're gonna do the same thing again. Okay? When you are looking at those phonics instructions, just remember for phonemic awareness, we're not giving them letters to see. This is all about sound. Now in the journeys, it'll say to open up a projectable, or it'll say to open up a flip chart to a page, and it has pictures of words. So it has a picture of a king, it has a picture of a car, it has a picture of a ring. And for that, you can use that projectile. Like, okay, for day 2, you're gonna be asking them, which of these 2 make the same sound? So we can go pick ring on one side and say, which of these pictures also sounds like that? And then we want them to find the king. Ring, king. And something else that I like to do with students when I'm working on phonemic awareness or spelling is using some like whole body movement. So if I go to a word like ring, I could go ing. And I could go ing. And using that has been very beneficial when I'm working with kids, because later on you might say, okay, I'm gonna say ing. Now I'm gonna take off the and I'm gonna put in a k. So it's ing. I'm gonna take off the and put in a k. So I'm gonna say ing. So just giving them ways to like use their bodies is also another way. You're not telling them anything different. You're just letting them have a resource to go back to when they're practicing these skills later. With phonics, we're teaching them the relationship between sounds and letters. And so, along with phonics, that's also where they're learning how to spell. You can use them you can use them together. And then as you get into the older grades, then you're looking exactly at spelling and so forth. So for, during this time, you're gonna be teaching them how to build words and then how to blend them. So for 1st grade, it says that we're gonna start off with the sound. We're gonna start off with our first sound, okay? So if I'm working with a student, I'm gonna say, listen. I'm gonna say, this sound is buh. And then I'm gonna have you do it with me. So right now we're gonna say, this sound is buh. Say it with me. Buh. Okay. Now I'm gonna add in another letter. I'm gonna say, this sound is ah. I would like you to say with me. Ah. Okay. Now we're gonna put them together. We're gonna say, buh, ah. You do it with me. Buh, ah. And then I'm gonna pull out that 3rd letter. Like this sound is. Okay. And I don't have, my fingers are not long enough for that, but if I put them all together, now I'm gonna go buh, ah. And then we're gonna work on it where you can even do 2 with your hand. You go buh, ah. So we're not wanting it to be choppy sounds. We can start off with that, but then we're building into making it more fluent, right? Just as a fluent reader, how you read a sentence, same thing with your sounds. So then I'd be going buh, ah. So not segmenting them, blending them together. And then you can incorporate that into spelling with writing. Then you say, okay, I'm gonna say the sounds, I want you to write the word. So it's a way to naturally start working on writing, but also like not making it seem like it's this scary thing by itself. Do you feel like that gave you a good example of being able to build a word and blend it together? And then over time, then you could just have it, okay, we're gonna speed it up a little bit. Ox. And you can start off slow and then build on. And another thing that I see a lot of people do is they'll take like a little race car and they'll have the race car go underneath. So like it doesn't stop. Ox. And you can add in play with that. That sounded okay to everybody? And with your older grade levels, you're gonna be doing the same thing, but it'll be a little bit different where instead of say like in first grade or second grade, that instead of doing like if I was gonna do the word ship, we're getting into like S alone makes a sound and H alone makes a sound, but together they make a new sound. So when you're doing this kind of blending with the older grade levels, instead of giving them the individual letters, the S, the H, the O, the S, H, I, and the P on your index card, you're building that sound that they're gonna use. So it would be the sh. And if it was ship, you'd be doing the same thing where it'd be the sh, in, and then a separate one, the P. And doing that exact same thing. Okay. Is that kind of helpful for you guys as well? So as they get into first and second, when they start learning that those two letters make a new sound, you're not giving them those individual letters anymore. You're giving them the sound and knowing that these two letters make that sound. So we're focusing on sound over letters. Because a big thing we get with kids that are having a hard time decoding words is that if these are all individual, they're going sa, ha, it, p, right? So we want to like make it known that S and H have their own sound, but when we put them together, they make a new sound. So at that point, we're giving them this sound and not, you can provide them the opportunity to build it. I personally want to do that. I would be providing them the sound because spelling is about sounds, not letters, but letters make sounds. Okay. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing.
Alright, next we're going to be taking a look at the daily writing. So, if you have everybody's got a teacher textbook, it's around page T52. May not be exactly there. This is the 5th grade page for that. But if you want to take a look, it should have day 1. And you're looking at what weekly things you're looking for your writing.
Oh wait.
Kinder is going to look a little different, yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Alright, so like I said, this is going to be the 5th grade example. Younger grades, it's looking a little different. The expectation is not going to be to write a paragraph in kinder. But let's take a look at what those 5th graders are going to be working on. So we have daily writing. For our daily writing activities, for this 5th grade, this is lesson 1. What they're going to be expected to be doing is they're going to introduce a short story and they're going to practice and apply. What you want to look for all these pages, if you're working on grammar or vocabulary, you always want to look for what your objectives are. So that's what you want your students to take away from that lesson. So this lesson, our objectives are to use narrative techniques and precise details, and then by the end of the week, we're going to draft, revise, and edit a short story. So what I like to do, Mr. Newsom talks about backwards planning, and what you want to do when figuring out what you need to do by the end of it is take a look for that writing sample. So he had shown this picture earlier. This is a grade level writing sample that you can expect. We want to make that our goal to be able to get there. So this one, if you're looking through, it's on page T55.
So that's the day 5 writing he's looking at right
Day
now.
5 writing, yeah.
So he looked at day 1, see where they're starting. Day 5, how is it going to end?
And then this is our rubric he had mentioned earlier. We don't do A through F here. We do 1 through 4, with 3 being masters. So that's our goal, is to be able to master what we're working on. Going back, I wanted to show you what a day looks like for that weekly writing. So day 1, like I mentioned, we're going to introduce the short story and we're going to practice and apply. We want to look for what we need for this day. So here they're showing us that we need projectables 1.7. That's where we go into where Ms. Finn taught us about the Google Classroom. We can find those projectables there. And the projectables that we're going to have are going to have these two. She had shown an example earlier about the second one being like an answer key. So if there's ever red on a projectable, that means what we expect for our students to be able to understand. And the first one is what we want to show them. So in this exact day 1, grade 5, lesson 1, we are working on writing a model, looking at a short story. So the main thing that we're looking for is being able to identify a beginning, body, and end of a story. This first one they have, they read through, they identified the ones for you, and what they ask us to do as a teacher, looking back again, is to tell students that they will be writing a short story in this lesson. We're going to display the projectable and read aloud writing model 1. That is our first writing model. So that first part here, we're reading it to them. And then the second one, we're going to try to find the beginning, middle, and end together. Some things that they tell you to keep in mind and to tell your student as you're working on this is you want to discuss what is a short story. So, for example, it asks you, it has a clear beginning, middle, and ending with events presented in sequence. So these are wanting to make sure that your student, by the end of the day, is able to identify those 3 parts of it. And then finally, at the end, after you're discussing that first projectable, the second part, it says, work with students to label the beginning, middle, and ending of writing model 2. And that's where they'd be working on that second paragraph, second story. All right, and for the writing, there's also some editing that goes along with it. So here they're working on editing another student's work. And each week, your student's going to be able to produce a writing piece that they can turn in for an AWR. So you'll be able to choose from at least 3 writing pieces throughout the AWR process. Mrs. Reggiani is going to go into what our assessment calendar looks like for the year for ELA. And then for the unit writing, it's going to look a little bit different. It's going to be on a benchmark test. That's going to be based off of what they're working on throughout that unit. So as you're working at it, there's 5 lessons within those units. We're not going to get to the end of unit 1 by the end of the first AWR. So we're going to have, in the future, we're going to be able to have that benchmark test with the unit writing that goes with it. Weekly writing pieces you're doing, at the end, you're building up for a big benchmark writing piece. Let's take a look at the calendar with Mrs. Reggiani.
Okay. You will all get a copy of the assessment calendar from your advisory teacher, so don't worry about that if it's too small. If you notice, there are 3 lessons in AWR period, okay? And that gives leeway for taking time and just assessing your child and reviewing skills that he or she may have missed, okay? And also writing. So there are there are 3 lessons in an AWR period. And there will be weekly tests that your advisory teacher should be giving you, okay? And at the end of like a section, whether it's like 3 to 5 lessons, there is a benchmark test. Now the benchmark test is a compilation of all the skills that was learned in the previous weeks. Any questions about this so far? Okay, so you don't need to turn to this page necessarily, I'll just read it to you, but there is a section towards the end of whole group that gives how you should, like, tips on how you should administer formative assessments. Okay, so you will be administering assessments at home, or your advisory teacher will be administering them here, depending on what your advisory teacher is expecting of you, okay? So, here's an example of a 2nd grade benchmark test. before I go into how to assess your child, I'd like you to read, I'm going to read like how you can accommodate your child without jeopardizing the validity of the test. Okay, a lot of parents sometimes don't realize that they're helping their child and pretty much giving them the answers. Okay, you want to avoid that. But there are ways to go about supporting them without giving the answers. So, read aloud the assessment directions and item prompts. You can read the directions to them, and I will model that. If children do not understand the directions, read aloud the assessment directions and item prompts in the child's native language. That's for you. Okay, to find any unknown words in the directions or item prompts that do not give away the answers to the items. So you can explain what the directions mean without a big clue to like what the answer will end up being. And I'll model that too. Allow for a break during the assessment. Simplify the language of assessment directions and item prompts, and so on. And the other ones are not, what do you call it? They're not for our situation because it says administer in a small group setting. You're doing one-on-one. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to model how you would assess your child at home. So I would be next to my student and I would have the assessment in front of me. And I would point to the top and I would say reading and analyzing text. We're going to read something and then we're going to see if we can understand it. Read the story Autumn Treasures before answering numbers 1 through 5. So I'm tracking, I'm saying it with them, or I'm saying it to them. I could say something like, listen carefully, and then we're going to answer questions at the end of this selection. So Autumn Treasures. Now, if your child can read this, I would have that student read it. In fact, this is their grade level reading. So I would have your child, after the directions have been read the text. Now, if your child is still learning how to read this grade level text, you can read that text to your child because now we've already assessed, that's an assessment in itself. The fact that they're not able to read the grade level text during this benchmark timeline. Okay, so if you are reading to your child because they are not reading this grade level text, you need to note it somewhere and say parent read selection to student, so that that's your assessment of your child, and that also lets us advisory teachers know too. Sometimes they can read a majority of the text. Okay, you can mark a word and say, like, I don't know, check mark or circle and say read word to child. Okay. So after the story has been read, either by your child ideally or by you, then we go into the questions at the end. And I'm going to read the directions. Now answer numbers 1 through 5. Base your answers on the story Autumn Treasures. Number 1. Where does this story mostly take place? You notice I emphasize mostly. Okay. A, and I'm going to point to it, in a forest. B, at the park. C, at Grace's house. Or D, in Grace's classroom. You are allowed to repeat the question and the answer. Okay. What I have seen parents do, however, is without realizing it, help the kid. Like, for example, they'll say, at Grace's house. Are you sure? You see how I'm kind of like nudging them to pick something else? Okay, I've seen that many times. Or they'll say something like, well, I'm going to read it again, just in case you pick a different answer, or something like that. That's a hint at, your kids will know. Yes?
sometimes I can say, at the park, and I'll say, would you like me to read it again so you can be
Yes.
sure? So if they have some hesitation in their answer, then offering it neutrally to say, would you like me to read it again? That offers them some confidence without saying, at the park, and you say, well, are you sure? Kind of,
Yes, you want a neutral response. You don't want to show any bias towards an answer. And the only thing you can do is offer reading it again. Now, some students have, like, they'll be like, I don't know, I just don't know. What's your best guess? Like, I mean, you know, what do you think is the best answer? Any questions?
I access it online, usually like online weekly tests, intervention assessments.
The advisory teachers will give these too. Any other questions? Did I miss anything?
Kindergarten assessments, because they aren't reading yet. Kindergarten assessments, it's gonna give you a script to read, like word for word. Kindergarten assessments are gonna be pictures where you're reading something out loud, and then the questions you ask, there's pictures that they circle. So, and then, but there'll be parts where sight words, you're reading it, saying the word out loud, and they're pointing to it. So kindergarten assessments look different than first grade and beyond.
You just reminded me of something. Third grade and up should be doing this independently. Like reading the whole thing. However, you still have to assess, you don't want to just assume. And then if you have to do the process I said, with noting that you read to the student.
Ability to read is an entirely separate standard from the ability to understand. So that's the purpose of saying, hey, I read this to my child. We're not testing can they read this story. We're testing can they understand the story and show that they have mastered those concepts.
Correct. And we are informally actually assessing fluency. Because read it, that's an assessment in itself. But we do need to move on to the comprehension analyzing part. Okay. So now Ms. O is going to talk about the common struggles and ways to engage your child.
Okay, hi, I'm Miss O, Simone Owens, but most of the kids call me Miss O. You can call me what you like. But
Don't call you after 3:45.
yeah, don't call me after that. So some common struggles I see when kids come to me, or just in general, is like correct letter formation. So like Miss Ben had said, I think like no floaty letters. This is obviously for the beginning when they're starting to write. But sometimes I see it in like older grades where they're so used to just writing, they're not taking the time to make sure that it's like the correct formation of letters. It's just like print awareness, stuff like that. Rushing and wait time. What I mean by that is, I know we have a lot of busy days and like homeschooling, we have a lot going on. But it's really important that you're not rushing through the work to be like, we got this AWR due tomorrow, so we're gonna get all this done today, because they don't retain a lot of it. For wait time, what I mean by that is when you're asking them a question or just talking to them, it's important to give them time to think and process. So like, I don't know, this is a math question, I'm just saying, what's 3 plus 5? Come on, so it's like, just give them enough time to think and process the answer. And it's okay just sit there and let them think about it, let them process it and get the right answer, or a answer. Phonemic awareness, Ben touched on this, which is, I just put sound because it's just the sound of letters, sound of words. They're just listening. It's not showing them a flashcard and saying, B, what's this? It's not the visual part, it's just sound. So a lot of times just making sure that you're saying the correct sound, that they're saying the correct sound. So you can correct them to make sure they're saying the right sound. I put an example of, we know how to sing the alphabet the right way, right? LMNOP. But a lot of times this is one letter, right? LMNOP. So it's important to correct them with this. It's 4 letters. It's not math. 5 letters like LMNOP, right? So it's correct them, in a fun way. You don't like, no, it's LMNOP. Why did you say it that way? And then phonics. So that's like the relationship between the letter and the sound. So, like Fen said, there's like a B, right? So this B, what sound does it make? So they're looking at it, they're thinking about it, they're saying it. So just slowing down and making sure they get a good foundation of phonics and phonemic awareness is really important because it lays like that foundation for reading and writing.
And about like showing it with your mouth.
Right. So like this is sound, and they're just let's see my mouth, right? Like just so they could see it, and then now you do it, like see that looks like a O, so cute. So engagement. These are just some things that I do when they come into the resource center, and then things that you can do as well. So Lexia, really important. It's an educational app for online learning, and that's for the younger kids and the older kids. So there's Lexia Core, that's for the younger kids, and then Lexia Power Up for the older kids. They don't do that at school, but we think it's cool.
I think it's very cool.
It's very cool. And then games. A lot of there's so many games out there that you can do with them. I forgot my game back there on the table, but we have. Let me see this for a second. They really like this one. It's called Spelligator, and it has little alligators, and then you can pick different letters like the E here, and I don't know, a P here, and then if there was a T, we could say pet. Say it together. What's that word? Pet. And then we could switch it out. And they only fit, right? Like this is not. They don't fit if it doesn't go there. So it kind of just helps them get the correct word. There's other ones like the sh sound. We can put it on there. So just different games that I play with them. Makes learning a little more fun. Doesn't seem as daunting. Whole body learning and movement. So like act. You don't have to sit there and just work book and book like right next to them all the time. You can get up and do different things, write on whiteboard, or
put letters on the floor, letting him
put like letters on the floor, and then you can be like jumping, doing different things like that. And then small study groups. I do small study groups. I say that because I say it so much, and very little people come. But Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do like computer lab too, so the older kids can come and bring their computers, and we can work on whatever they need help working on. That's even for the older 7th and 8th graders too, if you have any of them. And we work on things, or we do foundational stuff, work on the lessons they're on, and we can go back and get clarification and things like that. So I'm here to help and support. I'm Miss O. So that's it.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
What time on Tuesdays and Thursdays do you take a small study group?
1 to 3, right after lunch.
Yeah. And like major plug for those groups. Last year we had a group of middle schoolers who came in to do math, and they were working in the office right next to mine, and the amount of giggling that was occurring, but then also the amount of academic progress they were making. It's really cool. And so does a great job with those groups, and like you said, they are underutilized. Like they're really great, they're really productive, and we'd love to see more kids take advantage of that. Yeah.
Do parents stay for those groups, or we do?
Typically they're drop off.
Okay.
You can stay. Typically they're offered as drop offs.
Can we pick them up a little bit early, like 2:45? Do they have to stay for the whole 1 to 3?
No.
Okay.
We run for the middle, like our after school, like our computer lab situation for middle schoolers, like those afternoons are drop in.
Okay.
So a lot of times with that, like if we've got a couple of kids working on the same thing, then we'll be like, hey, let's all make sure we're there from like 1 to 1:30. And then what Mrs. O does is she gets them busy on like other work or other skills, and they kind of work a little bit more independently, but as a group, get those mirror neurons going in their body doubling, they're all like working hard. It's a really good thing. Yeah, so if there's something really specific that we're working on with a couple of students, and we'll designate a specific time for that, and then the rest is kind of fluid.
And
Yeah.
that's for the older kids?
So Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we'll have all of this will start in September, so we will send out information as it gets a little closer. Tuesdays and Thursdays is middle school, but we have designated learning time every afternoon for different student needs. Yeah, but Tuesdays and Thursdays we do have drop-in computer lab. Alrighty, so that concludes like all of the presentation. Now our advisory teachers are going to break into grade level bands and spend however much time that you want and need looking through your actual teacher's edition for your actual grade level, doing any lesson planning that you want, and moving forward from there. So, Ms. Fenn is taking Kinder. Miss Reggiani has 1 and 2. Mr. Newsom has 3 and 4. And Mr. Misselbeck has 5 and 6. If you guys just want to, do you want to just kind of pick, you can just work in corners?
Sure.
Alrighty, so let's just do Ben, Reggiani, Newsom, Misselbeck. And just kind of group up with your grade level that you want, unless you have multiple students. And then you are welcome to just work as long as you want and leave when you're ready. Alright? Thank you very much. Right, this one right there, and this one over here. But straight in the back, under the light switch. Okay.